Last week, we started a conversation with the 2025 AHF Traveling Fellows. A conversation about expectations, preparation, and what it means to step into an experience that's designed to stretch the way you think. In this second part, we shift the focus. This is where we talk about the impact of the fellowship, the moments that change perspective, the lessons that weren't on the itinerary, and how exposure to different approaches and different ways of thinking reshapes what you bring back home. As we put this series together, it once again reinforced why the AHF is more than just an organization. It's a community built on curiosity, mentorship, and the willingness to learn from one another, even when we don't all agree. If you want to be part of that community, we'd love to see you at the AHF 2026 annual meeting, June 5th and 6th in Nashville, Tennessee. This year's meeting is centered around the theme Consensus and Controversy, and registration is already open. You can find full details at anteriorhipfoundation.com under the events menu item. I'll also put a direct link in the description. And if you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast and are following along. Your ratings, comments, and feedback genuinely help shape the conversations we have here. So with that, let's pick up where we left off and continue the conversation. Jeremy, how did observing different surgeons and going to these different institutions change the way you think about your own practice?
That's a great question, Joe. I think, as I'd mentioned before, there are certainly more consistencies across the board than there are differences, which is the biggest thing that I took home. And I think the benefit is you start understanding where the goalposts are a bit better, as opposed to being in your own practice and you sort of know where they are, and then a complication or something hits you, and then you say, oh, actually, I missed that one by this amount, and that ended up being that result. Now, what I saw in the operating room working with the surgeons is, they don't worry about this part of the surgery the way I thought I should worry about it. So stop wasting time on that and take that time and dedicate it to another part of the surgery. So I think it helped refine kind of how I think about things and certainly dampen a lot of the worries that you have. And I think, especially in anterior hips, I think in all of orthopedics, it's kind of one of the procedures that people are apprehensive about starting because there are heavy critics of it from other approaches, right? And there are a known series of complications, as well as a significant learning curve. So I think the benefit of working with all the different surgeons and seeing their techniques was that it put my mind at ease, I think, in an anterior hip in terms of letting myself relax on certain areas of the surgery where I thought, oh, if I don't do this, I'm going to get that complication. And I think that was certainly quite valuable to see.
I want to touch on a little bit about the relationships that you guys form during this type of fellowship. And Alex, I actually want to start with you. So as a site host, what do you gain from your interaction with visiting fellows?
Well, as you know, Joe, what makes the Anterior Hip Foundation unique is really the camaraderie of the foundation. So whether you're faculty or participants or attendees, you can have conversations with whoever you want. You can ask whatever question you want. You can share experiences. It's such a cordial and supportive community that at the annual meeting, really there are learners and teachers, right, having conversations everywhere you go. And that continues in this fellowship. And so, first off, I'm a little upset that these fellows are letting out the secret that I was asking them, how does Jonathan and Charlie do this part of the case? I definitely, want to know their secrets as well.
I didn't name names.
And I guess I just outed myself, I guess. But it really comes down to the fact that I would do this fellowship myself if I could. I mean, it's that good that I would want to go see how these surgeons do things, because it also changes every year. These surgeons are constantly improving their techniques and using new advanced technologies. Things are getting better and better. So even one year to the next, it would vary. So it just speaks to the quality of the hosts. Um, but I think what Qais said earlier really is true, is that these fellows are the future of the Anterior Hip Foundation, Joe. They are really absorbing all of this information from all the various sites, and they are making it the best. They're making it better, right? They're picking and choosing unique aspects from each of their experiences and making it their own. And now we as hosts are asking them to share the experience with us back. So there's no question that they are really going to be the future leaders of the Anterior Hip Foundation. And so I really respect them for taking time out of their lives, like Jeremy said, really trying to gain new experiences that they wouldn't otherwise have access to, all with the sole purpose of improving the way that they can treat their patients better when they're at home. So it's a real privilege to host these fellows. It means a lot to me to be able to share in my experiences in the hope of helping them a little bit in building their own careers.
And for the fellows, can you tell me a little bit about the relationships you formed during the fellowship, and if any of them have continued beyond the visits that you had?
If I jump in with talking about the relationship between the three of us, that's been a huge part of my life since. We have a WhatsApp group where we keep in touch. We found out about sort of major life events, but also bounce ideas off one another. And I was very fortunate. I had a young lady who'd run a half marathon, developed hip pain, presented 11 days down the line with a displaced intracapsular fractured neck of femur. And she was going to be on my trauma list the next day. And I thought, well, here's something I may well need to open, and organized for the retractors to come in and discussed with Qais and Jeremy. And of course, Jeremy had written a paper on this and was one of the world experts of calcar plating, how to do it, the vascularity of the femoral head. Send the paper across, said, here are a few tips for you. And so it's this extraordinary thing of off the back of this 2-week fellowship, we now have a little group that is still shaping our practice.
I think that was one of the things I didn't realize I would learn as much with the fellowship was the extracurriculars with the co-fellows, and the discussion behind the scenes actually I think was very valuable in understanding anterior hips a bit better. We were able to talk about the ways that Alex did a hip, and we would argue about whether it was good or bad, or or are you going to implement that or not, and why not. And so I think having a group of three was and like-minded individuals was a good opportunity throughout the fellowship. And then in terms of your prior question too, Joe, about asking like our relationships with the staff surgeons, I think the benefit of the track that we were on with all the surgeons was they were all quite humble. They gave us the time of day. I think they understood that we're a little different than just one surgeon coming for one day for an experience and then going home. And I think that in all honesty, it speaks to the Anterior Hip Foundation being able to cultivate that group, and I think the surgeons understood that a bit, understood that well.
Yeah, I mean the amount of hospitality that each site showed was, immeasurable. I mean, you can have an Uber come and pick you up and drop you off and all that, but they would come and pick us up themselves, and we're in the car having a conversation. It's those are things that did not go unnoticed. You're opening up your own life. We have unlimited access almost, and there are times where we went to the homes of the host surgeons, and it's, you don't really get that any other way. and it shows that not only was the academic part fruitful, but that every host wanted to go and make sure that we felt like we were a part of their family. And this is it. It really sets us apart. The AHF family, that's real, and there's no halfway. You can always tell we're still in contact with each other, and we as fellows, we never felt as outsiders either. So already just by starting the fellowship, by the time we were finished, we felt like we were a part of it also. And we have is a lifelong experience with the lifelong friends.
Michael, you mentioned at the beginning that this may have, we'll say, opened some doors professionally with your ability to use this fellowship amongst the committees that you need to talk with to get approval. Are there any aspects, and I'll throw this open for any of the fellows, but are there any aspects of this fellowship that you feel sort of accelerated a part of your career, whether it's accelerating your surgical prowess, accelerating your academic prowess, or accelerating your ability to network?
I think the two things would be it's no mean feat to take a practice that's working. So my posterior hip practice, 15 months, it's going well. You have an average length of stay of 1, maybe 2 nights in hospital. You have happy patients at 6 weeks. I've had 1 dislocation from a traumatic incident involving alcohol 8 weeks post-op. But essentially, the operation works pretty okay. Patients are happy. I'm happy. So with that as your starting point, to make the change to something that no one else does takes a real leap of faith. But off the back of the year in Canada, seeing patients at 2 weeks behaving like their 6 or 8 week posterior hips, walking unaided, pain-free, delighted, you can see there are benefits to the anterior approach. And I think selling that to my colleagues initially and the senior leadership team and the various committees that I've spoken to thus far and still have to speak to next week, being able to say, I've had my learning curve in Canada. I've then gone and seen the greats of North American hip surgery over this incredible traveling fellowship. I'm ready to go. And I understand how to deliver this in a safe fashion with the appropriate governance in place has been hugely powerful. But I'm not there yet. We've still got 2 committees to go.
Jeremy, you made an interesting comment earlier talking about how the fellows were, I think the phrase you used was like-minded, which I find interesting. I want to ask if you recognize that you were with other fellows who were sort of like-minded. Was there something that this fellowship taught you about yourself that maybe you didn't recognize or gave you the ability to recognize in others just by going through the fellowship?
I think the biggest thing was that we're continuously students as surgeons, right? We go through 15 plus years of training, right? And then all of a sudden you're dumped in a silo in a corner and learning things, by yourself in the operating room. And then sometimes bouncing ideas off of colleagues, right? And that's certainly with reps and with volume, that's how you can learn. And then, a few years into practice, I think is honestly a sweet spot where, it's a great time to kind of start reevaluating your own practice, looking in the rear view mirror and then saying, do I still have the ability to learn something new for myself, but also to say, can we do better for our patients? Like Michael said, seeing an anterior hip at 2 weeks, that's certainly motivating to learn something new, right? And so I think the benefit of being with Qais and Michael, is that we were all early in practice, sharing the trials and tribulations of being early career surgeons in itself, removed from hip arthroplasty altogether. But certainly the fact that we're all willing to make change and be better and try and emulate, high volume, really good outcome surgeons, right? So I think that's what I'd say for that.
And Alex, I want to ask you, because you get to see the fellows early on, and then you get to see them when they come to the annual meeting. How do you see these fellows evolving from the beginning of their visit to by the time we're getting to celebrate what they've accomplished?
It's a lot of fun, Joe. Being the initial host site, I get to see them at the start, and they're probably a little jet lagged or a little bit deer in the headlights. They're not really sure what they just signed up for. But we have a great time in the OR. So we get them immediately in the OR, in the hospital, in the ASC. We do a lot of social events. And so you really get to know them. And, it's only for 3 days or so. But as soon as they leave, my entire team is like, wait, where are the fellows? We missed them already. And we already have FOMO, and we wish we were with them on their entire journey. So we really get to know them well. It's such an immersive experience for them, but also for us. And so we miss them. And then when we get to see them at the annual meeting, it is incredible to see how bonded they are. So they've talked about their friendship. They've talked about their collegiality. I can tell you as a host, it is incredible to see the interactions and the way they're talking to each other when I first reunited with them at the annual meeting. I don't think they knew where to start with all the stories they had, whether it was in the OR, in the clinic, in the hotel, at dinner, after dinner. Just the things they were sharing were remarkable. And it's just great to see those friendships and those bonds, and then to hear everything about all the experiences that they've gathered in those 2 weeks. I completely believe them when they say they're still digesting it, because they absorbed so much over those 2 to 3 weeks. But they really did evolve, to answer your question, into new leaders in the field. You can clearly tell that they are ready to educate others and to implement what they learned in their practice.
Qais, I wanted to ask you, because you're in an academic practice, have you found any aspect of the fellowship that has impacted how you mentor others?
Yeah, I think especially when you bring in something new, the first thing that you want to show is non-inferiority. You want to make sure that you are at best as good as anybody else. And being the only anterior hip surgeon in the area, the one thing you can't have is things to go wrong, because then everyone will say, why are you trying to do this? It takes longer, it's harder, you have a table, you need fluoro, and you're doing all this, and your outcomes aren't as good. So that was a burden that I had, whether it was true or not. I felt that, and I wanted to go make sure that I, at the very least, didn't have a complication rate that was more than anybody else. So then that was my first few years. Now that we know that this isn't a fad, now that we know that there are more people doing anterior now for primaries than probably any other approach. It's here to stay, and we are a part of it. And now establishing this as probably one of the best ways to do a primary hip, and expanding the indications with patients and with fractures and revisions. It just kind of shows that not only was I new to bring this to my practice, but that this is real, and I'm at the forefront of it. So it does kind of help to show both the practice and my residents that anterior is not a fad. It is the premier way of doing it, and we can do it as well, as fast, and as efficient as anyone else.
So I want to take a moment to address people who might be listening or watching this who are thinking about applying for the 2026 fellowship or future fellowships. And Jeremy, I'm going to start with you. What's the ideal situation that you think somebody who should absolutely apply for this fellowship, knowing what you know now?
I think should be a surgeon who is in early career, who I think has had exposure to anterior hips, either has seen them previously in fellowship or has done them. I think it's valuable. I don't think that's mandatory necessarily, but I think if I think back to if I would have done this fellowship in my first year practice as opposed to my fifth year, I think I got a lot more out of it this past year because I know where I would struggle previously in the operating room. So I came in with my internal questions in terms of being able to refine those, as opposed to being a blank slate and seeing Dr. Saw do an anterior hip in 40 minutes and thinking, what the hell just happened there? I mean, it looked amazing, but I think picking up on things and refining them require you to come in with a series of questions. So I think being a few years into practice is certainly valuable. And then I think that there's more to this fellowship than just learning and refining an anterior hip technique. I think understanding the efficiencies of different environments to operate in, whether it's the ambulatory surgery center versus a hospital, which we saw with Dr. Saw, for example. And as Michael had pointed out earlier, seeing how the team surrounding these surgeons work is it's unbelievable. And I think you need to see it to believe it, in all honesty. And so I think the fellowship offers more than just refining your anterior hip technique. So if you're looking for more than that, then I think it's something worth applying for.
So, Michael, let me ask you, if an applicant is preparing themselves to get the most out of the experience, what advice would you give them?
First and foremost, based on where you're traveling from, arrive early. And I'm forever grateful that I spent a couple of days in San Francisco walking around and adjusting to the time zone difference, because once it starts, it's really started and it doesn't stop. And the kind of stamina and endurance that we put ourselves through for the 2 weeks was there were moments when we missed our connecting flight from Colorado to Atlanta, and we'd sprinted for the connecting flight. We'd missed it by minutes, and I was all for giving up. And we had Charlie the next day, and Jeremy wasn't going to be defeated. And even though the airline staff had told us there was no other flight, he was there on his laptop proving there was another flight and got us rebooked onto the other flight that they thought didn't exist. And we got there and we dragged each other along. And I think going into it with a mentality of you are just committing to this for 2 weeks and immersing yourselves in it is fundamental. And it's not just about the surgery, it's about the relationships that you're going to build with the visiting surgeons and your co-fellows, and becoming a part of the AHF family. And I have a kinship to the AHF that I think is just as strong as to my British Hip Society or various other UK organisations, in spite of the fact that it's only been 2 meetings and a 2-week travelling fellowship. It really is a family feel.
Alex, without naming any names, what makes a visiting fellow truly stand out to a host?
Well, these 3 fellows, I will say, they are all fantastic. And it's because, as you can tell, they are energetic, they're enthusiastic, they're motivated to learn as much as they can. And they have a passion for anterior approach. I mean, the hosts of this fellowship, Joe, you yourself as past president, we all have a passion, right? Not just for the approach itself, but for teaching, for constantly learning ourselves and to share that with each other. So we want fellows who are passionate. We want them to be involved. We want them to be active learners, because that's why we're also committing our time to it. We want to have a great 2 weeks together. And as you've heard from this group, they were sponges from the beginning and they've learned so much. I look forward to learning from them.
I just have a couple of last questions because you gentlemen have been really, really generous with your time. And Qais, I want to start with you. How has this experience influenced what's next for you professionally, if at all?
It's funny. As soon as I came back, my chairman said, "Oh, so it sounds like you're looking for another job." I said, "No, no, no, that's not true." But I think that there's so much depth in in the 3 weeks, in that you can learn from zooming out and seeing how all the strings are being pulled, or you can go into the details of what time each patient's showing up, what time they get from one room to another room, what roles are done by which people. It is remarkable as far as, and just on the administrative level. So it's not just about the inside the OR and who uses which hook at what time. It's how you can make the process be the process, and how you can focus on things that only you can do. And I think that was one of the biggest keys, was trying to go and let go of things that I know I don't have to do. And I think that all kind of gets summed up in the Porsche driving experience. It's like, not everything is a curve, so you don't have to slow down into every curve. When you hit the straightaway, it's go baby go. And there was a lot of that, and I think that that's the key, is just let the easy parts be easy, because the hard parts are always going to be hard.
Yeah. Alex, how do you hope the Traveling Fellowship will evolve, or how are you planning for the Traveling Fellowship to evolve in the coming years?
Well, Joe, the fellowship's already grown each year, and actually the size of the fellow class will be increased for year 3 this coming year. We'll have more fellows, and we're also bringing on new host sites. We have applicants reaching out literally from all around the world all year long to apply, and we have surgeons routinely asking if they can be host sites. The enthusiasm and growth of the fellowship is incredible. I hope the fellowship evolves to include as many educators that want to teach and as many fellows that want to learn as much as humanly possible. I'd like to see multiple fellowships, or perhaps spin-off opportunities where AHF participants can set up their own desired visit somewhere. These things are already happening, and it's truly exciting to see.
What I'm going to end with you gentlemen is, I just kind of want to do a closing round. And the closing round, I'm just going to do a rapid fire, single sentence, single word answer from each of you. And I want to start. I want it to go Qais, Jeremy, Michael. I'll give you the sentence, and then I want you to go ahead and give me the first thing that comes to your mind. So, are we ready? First one word to describe the fellowship.
Life-changing.
Memorable.
Extraordinary.
One thing that you gained that you didn't expect.
Friendship.
Camaraderie.
Qais got me on friendship. I'm gonna have to double down on friendship.
One reason someone should apply this year.
Hot ticket.
I don't have a soundbite buzzword like Qais, but Anterior Hip Foundation is expanding and growing fast, and it's an exciting time to be riding the wave and being at the forefront. So it's a great time now it's going to be great in 10 years, but now is the time to jump on it.
Why wouldn't you?
And last one message to future fellows. And it could be more than just a single word. You want to give a sentence or two. What's your message to future fellows? Qais, start with you.
That we are like-minded, in the sense that we have chosen this field. Within this field, we have chosen this sub-specialty. Within this subspecialty, we have chosen this surgery. So we have all of that in common. If that alone is not enough, being around those people who want to lift each other up, learn from each other, and build as one unit, it's a priceless opportunity to get in on the ground floor of this is like Apple in its infancy. You won't get this opportunity again. And we are all blessed and fortunate.
I agree with Qais. I echo what he'd said there. There's always going to be critics of everything we do in orthopedics, especially in anterior approach, right? And when I left for the fellowship, one of my colleagues had said, well, you already do anterior approach, so why are you doing this? And I said, well, it's an ability for me to reflect on what I know and what I've learned, but also to refine my technique and to learn the self-awareness that we all need for our patients at the end of the day. And so I think it's honestly an amazing opportunity to reflect on your own practice, to be better for your patients. And as I said earlier, Anterior Hip Foundation has certainly set itself apart from other orthopedic groups as a community with collaboration. And I mean, this discussion in itself speaks volumes. So
I think a slight double-edged sword of the success of the fellowship is how competitive it's going to become year on year to get to be a fellow. And I've had consultant colleagues in the UK say to me, it sounds like it was an amazing thing. Any tips for how I stand my best chance when I apply? And I think the answer to that has to be, it's not just about what you're going to get out of the fellowship, but also about what each individual can bring to the fellowship is going to be a key part of being a successful applicant.
And Alex, I kind of want to leave the last question for you, because one of the things we haven't talked about, but that is crucially important for the success of the fellowship, are our sponsors, because they make this all financially possible. And so from your perspective, if you were to talk to sponsors directly about what they get out of providing support for the AHF Traveling Fellowship, what would you get to tell them?
That's probably been the easiest part of organizing this fellowship, Joe, because the fellowship really speaks for itself. For sponsors, they see the mission, they see the goal, and they're on board. These are things that they're trying to achieve with their own endeavors, so we're doing the legwork for them. They see the momentum of anterior approach. They see the education, the camaraderie, the leadership, how this is going to continue beyond these 2 weeks, beyond the year. It's really going to last a career of relationships. So for sponsors, they have the ability to get involved early and long term. And so we certainly appreciate all of them being committed to the AHF and their commitment to education. And for sponsors, it's a no-brainer for them to be involved.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank all of you for being part of this broadcast today, for telling us about your experience with the AHF Traveling Fellowship, both as fellows as well as Dr. Sa as a host site. And we look forward to your continued participation in the AHF in years to come. Thank you so much for being pioneers with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Once again, for information on the 2026 AHF Traveling Fellowship, go to anteriorhipfoundation.com/AHF-2026-traveling-fellowship, or just grab the link from the show notes. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the AHF podcast. Please take a moment to like and subscribe so we can keep the lights on and keep sharing great content just like this. Please also drop any topic ideas or feedback in the comments below. You can find the AHF podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or in any of your favorite podcast apps, as well as in video form on YouTube/@Anterior Hip Foundation, all one word. Episodes of the AHF podcast come out on Fridays. I'm your host, Joe Schwab, asking you to keep those hips happy and healthy and part of a fellowship.